When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing clinical social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 40. The stay-at-home mom, identity loss, now recovered. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the great pleasure of introducing an awesome and daring guest, Ifeoma Ungudike. Ifeoma is the author of The Successful Immigrant Women, a collection of stories and experiences of women, including her own, as she is well known to the process of immigration, having gone through the process twice herself. She is also called a Chief Encouragement Officer in many circles. She works with professional women who are seeking to discover themselves with a focus on developing and motivating leaders. As a professional accountant who has transitioned into different roles, including finance expert, educator, coach, consultant, student affairs professional, as well as serving on nonprofit boards, Ifeoma brings a unique and authentic voice to how women can boldly position themselves. Ifeoma loves to learn and finds each experience as a great teacher. She loves to inspire women because she believes in everyday successes and the power of the new daily chances life gives to everyone. She is a wife, mom, daughter, sister, and friend who is fiercely caring. Her mission is to inspire joy and enlighten women from all walks of life. Hello, Ifeoma. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Thank you so much, Salima, for having me. Thank you so much. When I was listening to you, I was like, "Whoa, who is she talking about? That
I'm
is an
talking
amazing
about you.
intro."
No, I'm talking about you. I'm so thrilled to have the chance to chat with you on the show today, and my heart is filled with immense gratitude, especially because you accepted this invitation for chatting with me. And I can't thank you enough for bringing with you this willingness, this openness, this ability to, bring support into this conversation, and really just to help take a stance, or just to take a stance with me to help break barriers of mental stigma. It means so much. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's not every time we get a chance to be vulnerable, especially with people that may hear the story that I may not personally know. So I really truly appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much, Salima.
It's so refreshing that you say it's an opportunity to get vulnerable. Usually people are like, oh, you want me to do what? So I always encourage everyone to get comfortably uncomfortable. And here you're ready to just open right up. So hats off to you. So, Ifeoma, in case you're still wondering, So, this podcast, it's about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And we know that no matter what the story is, whatever the struggle, whatever the strife is, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way. And it typically remains unseen. It's not expressed, it's really kept tucked away. And so, this platform, it serves in a way to break those barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So, I'm really hoping that our presence together, my hope and my aim is it's really all about encouraging people to share and tell what they typically have hesitations for expressing. So, Ifoma, I'm bringing forward a trend and it's called the mental beauty rethink. What are your thoughts about this?
Mental beauty. I really like that name because placing that word beauty right beside mental, it's not something we commonly see. And I do appreciate the work that you're doing because we do need to speak up and speak out about mental wellness and mental health, and seeing it from that perspective of beauty can only get that momentum moving.
Yes, momentum. Yeah, it's kind of what I'm looking for. I mean, I guess it means different things to me at different times, but certainly, I often think about that stigma of just even in conversations when we talk about physical health, there's so much neutrality attached to it. But as soon as we talk about mental health or remote that we mention something that's related to mental well-being, people start to cringe. People get tense. People stop making eye contact. I've seen it so many times. So it's like we're not equipped to be open in these conversations as a society as a whole. I think we're getting there. I think the door has been opened. But I guess that's where the notion of mental beauty came from, is that just really breaking down these barriers, really allowing people to be able to see this as an equal, like our health, our overall health is one big whole
Mhm.
wellness package, right? And physical health and mental health need to be seen equally.
Well, yeah, not maybe not just only equally, but what's beautiful about what you're proposing and what you're putting forward is also, for me, when I reflect on what you've just said, is just also being able to speak out. However, sometimes you don't even know what you're going through or how to solve the problem, and it's only by doing what you're doing, Salima, that people can have that resource and that support, not only to go through that, to break down those stigmas, um, but just get the support that they need.
Yeah, and I'm thinking as about all of the spiel I just said to you about, what mental beauty rethink really means to me. And then I started to think about the word that you used at the start of this chat about momentum. And it is momentum. It is momentum for people to see that wellness. It's momentum for people to see the equality in physical and mental health. And so, I think momentum's a really great catchword to keep on record here. I really appreciate that you brought that forward. Thank you.
Yes, and momentum, right? It's you keep moving. You start a movement, you don't stop because you lose momentum when you stop.
And speaking of momentum, Ifoma, I'm ready to move forward to unpack your story. I hope you're as ready as I am.
So let's get this started. Let's see how it goes.
Give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
If I would say, it would be being brave and courageous stay at home mom.
Being brave and courageous stay at home mom. What does this headline mean to you? Can you say a little bit about that?
Sure. I think that any woman, any mom, that decides to stay home, for any number of years, or as long as they are um, a mom and at home, that they are actually brave and courageous doing that, because it's something that is not really spoken about. Sometimes people see it as a privilege, you get to stay home, um, but it's more than that. It's a kind of a job that people don't talk about, or some people don't see the value and appreciate it the way they see other things, because of maybe it doesn't bring in any monies, in that sense, but it's really a lot that those women that choose to stay home, it's a lot of things that they get accomplished and nobody's tooting their horns in that sense.
Mm-hmm. That's a completely new spin. And I know we're going to learn more about it as we unpack your story. So let's segue right in there. Tell us more about what your untold story is all about.
Yeah, so I am choosing at this moment to speak about my time as a stay-at-home mom. I stayed home for roughly 10 years after I started having my children. And I it wasn't something that I could have in that during that period related to any kind of mental health or wellness. It was just something I did, and my husband and I thought it was something that we needed to do at that time. So I do have four children, and I had them in the span of 6 years. So then over the 10 years I was home with those children. But before then, before I even got married, I was already working, right? I was in a career in the bank. And so choosing to stop my career, at that point, and stay home for all those 10 years, uh, without even really thinking much about it in that sense. I think it's when somebody asked me recently, and then she says, "So what's your story?" And I feel very blessed. Um, I feel like I when she said that, "What's the story?" Because everybody has a story, and I was like, I just feel blessed. I don't know if I have any such story. But then that made me to start thinking, you maybe you just put it away somewhere, but we all go through life. And so I chose to look at this experience and time in my life and reflected on what it may have done for me, and the opportunities it may have created for me to be able to support other women.
And I'm curious if you can share when you were having this 10-year pause in your career, having your kids, 4 kids in 6 years in that time period, were you already in Canada?
No. So I had my children when I was living in Italy.
Okay.
So I had left my home country, Nigeria, to live with my husband in Italy, and I had my four children in Italy.
Hmm.
So that also brings, its own spin, because of course I didn't speak the language, the culture was different.
Is there a cultural component that also got added to some of these layers?
Yes, many cultures. Just being newly married, being a new mom, new language, new food, new culture. It was a lot of new things happening at the same time for me.
Wow. And so when you were at home, what sort of thoughts did you have? Like, were you comparing yourself to the other people in the outside world? Or, were there moments that you were having like thoughts of regret? Or do you feel like you were having thoughts that were like self shaming or self punishing thoughts? Like, can you say a little bit more about what that internal process was like for you?
Sure, and I for me personally, I do not recall having those kind of thoughts. Like it didn't just come to me. However, I did have external influences, and there were people that would talk to me from my family, from my friends, and they would question at that time, like, so why would you, after all this education, all this starting such a big career, and then just stop? Like, what are you doing to yourself? So I had those questions coming up. Fortunately for me, I was at that time, I knew that that was what I wanted to do. And I didn't spend a lot of time trying to explain it to anybody that asked the question. Most times I would just smile, and say, and in my head I'm like, thank you for thinking of me. I know my mates are progressing and moving ahead in their career, but at this point I'm really enjoying my children. So that
Mm-hmm.
was my the way I thought about it. I also did have a lot of other friends though that were stay at home moms, and I knew it bothered them, in that sense that they were now not able at that point to continue their career. So I was aware that it could have that impact. So I think for me, what was helpful was I knew it was a decision I wanted to. It was a decision I made at that point. That that's what I needed in that season in my life.
There were these external influences, but it seems like you had a strong enough voice to be able to have clarity in those moments of choices that were good for you, regardless of what people felt. And you were also noticing that others who were in a similar situation as you were also bothered by having to stay home. So I guess something that I'm curious about is, going back to your headline of being brave
Mhm.
and courageous. Can you say more about being brave and courageous reflecting on your story? Because I know you talked about being brave and courageous as a stay at home mom in terms of like, people not seeing the value or appreciating the things that are being done because maybe, being a mom's not bringing in the money perhaps. Can you speak about it more specifically to how you were impacted, knowing that this is your headline?
Yes, I can definitely speak to it. And even though the initial question you had asked me, I personally was not having those internal thoughts. That did not mean that I was not impacted. I just chose not to dwell on those thoughts. But things were definitely happening, just like they would happen to most stay-at-home moms. So I did have some struggles. Because throughout those years, I was, I didn't have a lot of, I mean, I had adults, stay at home moms like me around me, but during those moments, we would, it was all about children. you know we are only talking about babies and babies and babies, and sometimes it's good to just have adult conversations. um but I think that's what something that a lot of stay-at-home moms miss. Not, again, it doesn't mean that they're only staying with babies. A lot of times they are with babies, that's for sure. Most of the time they are with babies. They do also hang out with other stay-at-home moms. But what is happening, or at least what was happening for me, is we were all our conversations were about the babies as well. So we weren't having adult conversations. And I can remember, in those moments where some some people in my circle that were not stay at home mom, that were, they continue to pursue their career. I think they saw it differently. Some thought it was a privilege to be at home because that's maybe what they would have wanted to be, but nobody was, having those conversations as to what loss I was going through. Even myself, not recognizing some of those losses myself. It was those kind of losses around my identity, because my whole life during that period just became about the children. I didn't like think about myself. I didn't have conversations about myself. I didn't buy things for myself in that sense. Like it was all about somebody else or the people I had to care for at that time. So I do say that they are brave and courageous, because it's, you know it's not easy to just lose yourself in that way. And for me, not even recognizing that that was happening. But I, at some point I didn't get tired, because I was really enjoying being with my children. It actually had to be pointed out to me. And if I can share this, I mentioned this in my book, but it was a conversation I actually had with my mom that brought this to my attention. So she had asked me during one of our phone conversations. She says, "How are you?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "We are fine." So she's like, "No, I mean, how are you?" I'm like, "Yeah, we are fine." And she's like, "No, you're not answering the question." I was very confused, because I'm like, "I just answered you. We're really, really fine. What else do you want to know? Hey, I called everybody. Come and say hi. You can hear their voices. Everybody is fine." And she's like, "Well, that's exactly the problem." She's like, "I want to know how you are doing." And so I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you want to know how I am doing?" And I couldn't honestly answer, because I've never thought of, like, I had stopped thinking of myself, right? So I'm like, "Yeah, how am I doing?" I honestly couldn't even, like, I didn't know. I couldn't answer her. Like, obviously I was not sick or anything, but it wasn't like I wasn't used to talking about myself anymore. So that was the first time I actually sensed that, like, oh, oh my gosh, how am I doing? What is happening to me? Um, I was confused with that question for sure.
So, are you telling me, Ifoma, that if your mother had to ask you this question, and repeat, "How are you doing?" Does this mean that self-care was not part of your life?
Exactly. It was
Oh,
definitely not.
not part of
Um,
your life. So,
yeah, I
what
just
did that
felt.
look like? So, I mean, like if you were having body pains or a headache or, needing to get new shoes or something, what would that look like for you at home? Like, how would that have been during that 10-year pause?
That would be interesting because I actually fought those things. Like I fought not, being sick. So it was kind of unheard of to be sick, because like, oh, who's gonna take care of all those people? So like I think I had that internal fight with, being physically sick. So I can't even remember being physically sick, or if I was, I pretty much must have gone on my with my life being sick. So there was not that. And then you asked about, if I wanted like physical things as well, like shoes, right, and dresses. Yeah, I didn't really think much about those things. I just would wear what I already had. Didn't need to get any new thing for me. In fact, it was interesting because sometimes I may actually go out with the intent, to get a new pair of shoes, boots, whatever. But then I really recall going, to the stores and really going straight to the baby section and just getting things for babies. um
Right.
and and because I was not working as well, I think there was also this guilt I felt about if I had to spend the money on myself, but it was okay to spend it on the family.
So you wouldn't spend money on yourself. You would spend money for your family only. But aren't you part of that family?
Of course, I am. I
Right.
actually, I'm a big part of the family. Um, yeah, so that's the interesting thing, because I think that's where that the loss, it was so subtle, right? um
Hmm.
and it, again, I wasn't thinking about it. But as I reflect now, that was definitely something, and I carried it on with me because, well, when I was working, I was earning monies. It sounded like it was my monies. I did not have, any restraints. Like, my husband did not say you cannot spend my monies. Actually, I was the person, as an accountant, I was actually the person in charge of the finances. But somewhere in all of this in my head, I got it in me that, okay, you're not earning this monies, and yes, it's, you're the person that is managing this monies. However, you shouldn't spend it on yourself. You can spend it on the family. Nobody told me to do that, but I just did it. So that was how much I had lost myself. It was so much okay to buy things for the children, for the house, but I never thought I should use that money to buy something for myself. So I always wonder too, for other stay-at-home moms, that feel like they are not working and they're not earning the monies, how this may be impacting them and they're not even aware of it.
Right. Okay, because, the money piece is such a sensitive topic and it affects everybody in such different ways. And so, for you, having that career pause, when you were working, you'd established your career.
Yes.
Did you ever give it a second thought when you needed to buy something for yourself before having your kids?
No, no way. I would just buy it.
Just whatever you needed, you would get. You
Y-
wouldn't think twice.
yes.
I mean, you might
Yes.
make, cognizant, proper choices and whatnot, but like, you didn't have any issues.
No. It was not
Okay.
something I would think of. Yeah, I would just, I mean, I needed it. I could get it, and it made sense, and so I would get it. But I had come to that stage where I didn't even think of what I needed or if I needed anything, right? I just felt I was okay. As long as these people, my children were fine, my husband was fine, then we were fine. I was using, like, there was no I or me. It was very plural. I was merged in their identities.
So, I mean, yeah, I guess that it gets all tangled, right? And so,
Yes.
are you basically telling me that you were telling yourself things like, it's not my money, so that means I don't have money? Like, do you feel like any of that was happening in the background for you? Or was there anything related to your pride that was getting in the way to even? ask? Or, I mean, I'm sure it's not a question of getting permission from your husband or anything, but sort of, I'm just curious about, how that would have happened, knowing that, your lifestyle was very different before taking that 10-year pause. So I'm just curious
Yes.
about what happened in that 10 years.
Yeah, so it wasn't about like me going about saying to, like, if I saw something I wanted to buy and I'll say no, you don't have money, so you can buy this. Again, it was more like, and I had I was the person that had the paycheck was given to me because I was managing the household finances. I think it was really mental, like it was in my mind that I began to see myself as this person. And it's, speaking about it, it's not very empowering, but I made myself that, and I didn't think in that sense, because of course what was in front of it was, you have these people, you're going to take care of them, and you're taking care of them, and they kind of became my life. So it wasn't like if I saw something, I'm like, oh, that looks good. There was no like second thought of, that looks good and Ifeoma can have it. It just stopped at that looks good. But if it was,
You didn't even
it
allow
was a baby
yourself
thing.
You didn't even allow yourself to entertain
Yes,
any
it
thoughts.
just
Like
ended.
it was so
Mhm.
ingrained. Like that whole process shift was that
Yes,
change was that deep, eh?
it was very deep, and it's still. So the interesting thing, just
Mm-hmm,
very recently, a few weeks ago, and
hmm
that's when I started tying it back to this, and I'm so happy that I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to say the story, I need to say it out to
hmm
myself, because the more I say it, then the more aware I'm becoming of times when
Yes,
it's happening. So of
yes.
course,
That's all a part of
I'm
the neurolinguistics. So what happened a few weeks
yeah.
ago?
Yes. So of course I'm doing the hybrid work.
Mm-hmm,
And interestingly, the day I was supposed to show up at the office, I forgot my laptop at home.
mm-hmm,
Um, and in fact, the night before, I had intentionally packed my things ready for work, and I chose to take a smaller bag. Because I was not remembering that I need to go to work with my laptop. So I got to the office, and oops, I forgot my laptop. And well, fortunately, I called my husband, and he was able to bring it to me because I take public transit to work. And so I said, this cannot happen again. And I started thinking, why did I even do this? Well, it turns out that because I needed to carry my laptop in a backpack. And I'm like, I don't want to carry a backpack that my children would carry to school. I wanted something fancier. So I went to look for, a good backpack that would be fancy, that I could carry to the office, and definitely not forget my laptop again. And right there in that store, as I was looking through these backpacks, I would look at something and I would look at the price, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're not gonna buy that. Um, but I
mm-hmm,
just I just remembered that my children just went back to school, and I thought, oh my gosh, well, you just bought this backpack for a
mm-hmm,
child, and it costs this much because you said, well, it's big enough, it can take their basketball shoes, it can take their basketball, it can take their laptop, and it
mm-hmm,
costs me this much. And I didn't even like shrink or do, and like it was okay, like I didn't think twice about buying
mm-hmm,
that. But here I am in the
right,
store,
mm-hmm,
not because I couldn't buy the backpack for
right,
myself, but
yeah,
I'm like really getting smaller and smaller again because I needed to spend on myself. But I didn't have any issues spending on somebody else. And it was something I needed. Yeah, maybe, I could have gone with a child's backpack to work, but like, no, I don't want to do that. And I'll probably forget my laptop again at home if I had
mm-hmm.
to do that. But that was amazing to me to just see how deep this belief had
Right,
actually
and that it could
impacted
pop
me
up,
years
and that it
after.
could pop
Yeah.
up again years later, or, like, maybe not that it was fully resolved, but it gives you an opportunity to see that even when you have healed and worked through so much of a narrative, that sometimes there's those deeper layers that just pop up. They just, and they show up,
Absolutely.
and, that narrative and what you've been able to reflect on it really fascinates me to hear about, just even in a general level, in a general sense, about how some of the stories that we tell ourselves and the patterns that ensue from that, right? So
Yes.
this is really one of those things, right? If you're somehow devaluing yourself, how at the beginning we were talking about how, it is brave and courageous to be a stay-at-home mom, like your headline, and the
Yes.
value and appreciation that people might not see. I wonder if maybe there was a part of you on a subconscious level that was not valuing and appreciating it as well,
I think so. I think
right?
so because just like the society would think, at least most people in the society don't see the value. You don't bring in any monies. You're here all day, and I see a lot of stay-at-home moms like me who just wear a regular, I don't know, joggers and
Right,
just any, you're not dressing pretty because you're not going to work, you're not doing
right.
makeup,
Mhm,
I could just pack my hair in a bun all day and carry my braids for like forever.
mhm,
But making sure my kids were always, their braids were always up to up to date.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
just because I think also, yeah, definitely it feeds into that because of course I wasn't valuing myself, and the society
mhm,
also doesn't value me. I feel that all is part of the story.
mhm.
Yeah.
It's so important for us to really take time to seek the truth and fact about where these stories come from. It doesn't matter what society thinks or how it's positioned in society, but it doesn't take much for each individual human to sort of get influenced by it. And so, just what you were saying is that somehow, you didn't focus on yourself. You let yourself go, but you put all your attention on the kids. And so
Yes.
it's almost like it's no one's authority but our own. And I don't think we do it, and it was never done intentionally.
No.
This is nothing to say like this was intentional, but this is how we build awareness, is by sort of teasing these intricate details of our story and our journey, and these parts, so that we can then tap into it in another way. And the neurolinguistics continues as we uncover more and more and where these things come from. It's really important.
And you know what, Salima? If I had to do it again, I mean, I will stay home if my babies were younger again because I can't. I cherish those years, those formative years. But what I know now, I could have, said to all those moms I would hang out with in the parks and in the stores, we could do challenges, right? Today, you just dress up in your Sunday best and let's go shopping. Like, that's okay. As opposed to, well, where am I going? Anyways, I'm just going to carry these children and some are going to throw up on me. It's going to be, my clothes are going to get dirty. You're not thinking of those things. I'm like, no, maybe today we're gonna wear high heels and go to the park, like whatever. I think those kind of things may bring some, that change that perspective, even though I wasn't thinking of those things, but I was definitely not valuing myself in that sense. And it could have been little things like that. So yes, they are physical, but as women, that would have maybe even just made you feel valued, feel good, like yes, I can rock this nice dress and go to the park and who cares, and other women are rocking it with me, so then I don't look strange in the park wearing high heels, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I never heard anything in your story up to now that there was anything in terms of a regret for staying at home with the kids. I think it's so beautiful that you had
Yes.
created that opportunity so that you could be present and witness those formative years of your children and all of them. But that wasn't the part, right? The part is how you viewed yourself, how you treated yourself, how you neglected yourself.
Yes.
And how it's so easy to do, but it's also just as easy to undo. Women and mothers and stay-at-home moms, you can find your crew and you can challenge each other. And even for yourself, there are certain things that you could have, like, moms can schedule, which is like make
Yes.
sure they go for a massage once a month, make sure you go
Mm-hmm.
and do your hair and nails, or, buy one new outfit each month, or some, even if we're looking at something so tangible, right? Have date night twice a month with your partner, and connect with family and friends who want to spend time with your children so you can have downtime. And so
Yes.
knowing, but giving yourself permission to do it,
Yes.
and not let that guilt take over. That's really important, right? So, Ifoma, when people come to see me in the therapy room, in the therapy sessions, people are
Mm-hmm.
typically in one of three places when they come to see me. And how I position it is they're getting started with their story, they're in the middle of it, or they're looking back, right? And so when people are getting started, sometimes they have no idea what direction to take, what they should start with, what should even be their first step. And some
Mm-hmm.
people are in the middle, and they have a plan, but they need guidance, they need support. And some people are looking back, either they're getting some closure, they're reflecting and introspecting, or they're trying to close up some gaps so that they can move to that next position in their life. So I'm curious about whether you would say that you are getting started, in the middle, or looking back.
Oh, I definitely am looking back.
And so, what do you want to remember about the process of your healing journey, knowing that you're looking back now?
It's exciting. I know
Mhm.
it may be interesting to put it that way, but I actually feel excited because of the possibilities, like just knowing that I had unconsciously developed some limiting beliefs for myself, and beginning to see, as I interact with more and more women, from this angle and perspective, how I could be in a position. You could have a mom that says, "Hey, can I work part time, or can I just have this flexible arrangement?" And from my perspective, it's not just because they want to only be with their child and they can't afford childcare, which is a valid thing, but can you imagine also that opportunity to have some some time with adults that are going to work, not just adults that are talking only babies. Um, so for me, it's actually exciting that way, that as I'm reflecting back and learning more, I'm becoming more aware of times where I'm now still stuck in those days when I was stay at home mom, or those things that I learned unconsciously from that time, that I'm only just beginning to see what my possibilities are, and how I can also support other women and my daughters, whoever is going to, because this is not going to be the end of it. Women are always going to stay home to take care not only of their children. I mean, we're predominantly, women. Caregiving falls on us. So we if you may have aging parents or relations, I'm sorry, relatives, that it's not only children, and we have, when you feel like you have to make a choice between staying home or being at work for any reason, then we don't want to lose ourselves, because we are actually, one other thing that I learned from this whole process is, you can only give what you have. So even though I gave up myself in that sense, and was thinking only about my family, they they lost me, right? Because if I had come as myself, I would only have been enriching our relationship.
Right. And so there's so much self-discovery that I'm hearing as
Yes.
you're unpacking this really important story. If I could ask you to connect with your vulnerability a little more in hindsight, because I know at the time you might not have had the capacity to even be thinking about this, but in hindsight now, how has your untold story, this story, affected your mental health? How did it affect your mental health back then?
I think, definitely not thinking about myself
Mm-hmm.
was a big impact. That
Mm-hmm.
loss of identity
Mm-hmm.
um, was one way that my mental wellness was definitely impacted. Because who knows, you had asked me at the very beginning about self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I can't even remember being sick, so what was I in denial of, right? All those
Mm-hmm.
all those denials that I have had. Even the friend that asked me, "What's your story?"
Mm-hmm.
And I have this positive outlook about life, but when she asked me, I was also struck, and I had to let down my ego, and I said, everybody, yes, I'm a human being, so something happens to me. Could that also be it, that you know yes, I'm a positive person, but always denying, even when important things are happening to me that I could address and take care of, and not reflecting on them, but choosing only to you know pick and choose in that
Mm-hmm.
sense. That is not holistic. That is
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
real, and definitely it
Mm-hmm.
impacts my mental wellness, because I'm not giving it that full attention that
Mm-hmm.
I need to give it.
And so, do you feel that kind of what there were some things that you were sharing with me before? Like, do you feel like the way that you would just stop your thoughts from moving forward, like your thoughts would just end at like, oh, that's a really nice top, like, or oh, those are really nice shoes, and then just move on to the children's section of the department store. Do you feel like you also stopped yourself from feeling? Did you pack up your feelings?
Definitely, I did.
Yeah.
Yes, that's part of that denial, right? Because if I wasn't ready to dwell on those things, even though it was unintentional, because I was like, there's something more serious to be dealt with here, so I could just pack myself and pack my feelings and let them sit somewhere else, unnoticed, really small. Um, yeah, I definitely was impacted that way, and it still shows up, right? So every here now and again, like that experience I just shared, in the store where I just wanted to buy the bag.
Mhm.
I can just imagine if I continue to reflect on this in the many ways I try to make myself small, and maybe not just only for my children now, but could be
Right.
my team, it could be the people I I interact with, that I take on that leadership role, and then I throw in myself, and it's all about them, and nothing about me.
So, are are you like basically saying that even the way you would, let's just keep your thoughts all inside, like you really just kept all your feelings inside? Like, do you think that there was any awareness when you didn't like when you weren't feeling good from an emotional standpoint? Like, I mean, it might be hard to recall, but do you feel like there was any semblance where you actually were aware, but it just might have been too much to feel, so you just chose not to?
I really can't remember.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I I can't remember that
Mhm.
at this point if there was any such time. But
Mhm.
I do know that I was not feeling for myself. I could feel
Right.
for other people, but for
Right.
myself, it was like I wasn't in the question. I couldn't have had any like I had to be good, right? Because
Mhm.
thinking I was good, and had no problems, nothing
Mhm.
to worry about, then I could just focus on it of every
Right.
other person.
Right.
So really, if there was any such feeling, I may not have even noticed it, because I wasn't thinking of myself at that time.
So you really were keeping it all inside, and there was
Yes.
no sharing, no verbalizing, no articulation, even if you did
No.
have any indication of that. Now, what about any feelings of loneliness? Did that ever come up for you?
Yes, I felt lonely, especially in those first years of immigration. Actually also shared another story in my book, where one day I was singing. We were getting ready to go to the church. I think at that point I had only just even had the one child, and he was still a little baby. And I was singing, and then from the mirror I could see my husband. Really, he had just stopped whatever he was doing, and he just stood there, and he was staring at me in bewilderment. So I'm like, "What happened? Like, why are you looking at me like that?" And he says, "Since you came to Italy, this is the first time I'm hearing you sing." And I was shocked. So I'm like, because I used to sing in the choir, even before I came. Um, and he said that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, well, okay. And I don't even know what happened that day that I chose to sing, and I hadn't realized I had never sang before since I joined him in Italy. But when I wrote my book, and in reflection, I think what had happened to me was that loneliness, the new culture, the new language, and well, he would go to work, right? So then I would just be the only person at home, and that was my first pregnancy, and then the first baby, and my mom, like nobody else I knew was around. My mom came later on, because she was also working at that time. So when she was able to get some time off work, that was when she came to visit, and spend some months with us. But I was really lonely. But that's probably how it came out: silence and quietness, and just not doing anything that had anything to do with me that I would have been doing before. So that was interesting to me when he pointed that out, and it must have been shocking because he says this is the first time, and I'm like, whoa, so I didn't sing all these months, all these years I have not been singing, but that's actually something I love to do. So yeah.
So that tells me a lot more about the loneliness and
Yes.
how that pattern emerged for you and how the
Hmm.
emotions were. So, Ifoma, what is your key message to the listeners of our show? What would you like them to know?
there's a couple of things. I think that for any woman out there, whether it's a stay-at-home mom or you have your career and you're going to work, or you know someone that is a stay-at-home mom, that you reach out, you you begin to explore how your relationships are impacting you, and really knowing, like I said, that you can only give what you have. You can't give out of an empty tank. And definitely knowing yourself, and you recognizing your identity as a person and having that value for yourself, is only going to empower you to be able to give more. So reach out. If you're the stay-at-home mom, think of some creative ways to be able to continue to value yourself, and engage with other people. And if you're just somebody that knows a stay-at-home mom, whether you're an employer, think of ways you can help them. You can help anybody that is a stay-at-home mom have that value for themselves by providing those opportunities to interact with adults in an adult setting. And that way we can start to break down those barriers, because I do know that this is something that may lead women to postpartum depression. There is actually a thing called stay at home mom depression. So it is a thing. And I think these are ways that the more we speak about it, the more we recognize that women, regardless of where they are at, if they have chosen to be at home, that they do bring value, and they have value.
Right. Awesome. So great that you're able to tap into, um, being a voice for stay at home moms, as well as knowing that, for some moms, that depression could be a real thing that they struggle with, right? And that it really does impact the overall health and well being. And whether it's just symptoms of depression, or whether it's full on depression, or whether it's postpartum, it's so important to stay connected with people and start
Yes.
your journey. So, Ifoma, what is a cause or an organization that has been impactful to you on your journey that you would like to give a shout out to?
Oh, that is simple, because when I think of the identity loss,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the organizations that helped me in my journey, through life coaching, when I had now arrived in Canada and I was ready, and willing to start my career again, I had attended a program called McBride Career Group. I think they are now called MCG Career, here in
Okay.
Calgary. And I had the opportunity to work with a life coach, and she helped me during the sessions that I had with her to start thinking again about myself as a person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amazing. Thank you. Okay, so how can people connect with you if they would like to? What are your handles?
So I have a website, and it's www.jason.com. So that's
Mhm.
my website. People can also connect with me at on LinkedIn at Ifeoma Ngudike, and I'm also on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Perfect.
Yes.
LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and we've got your website. That's awesome. All right. So, Ifoma, guess what?
What?
You've just dared yourself to share. Congrats. Yes.
Yes.
How
Thank
do you
you.
feel? How do you feel?
Um, I feel like I need to listen to this again. I think some of the things that came out were even just things I was just exposed to right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel again empowered. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's empowering to be like I free. The more awareness I get
Mm-hmm.
about myself, the more freeing it
Mm-hmm.
is.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel empowered.
That's so nice. What a lovely feeling to have. I feel refreshed just hearing about that experience from you. And I really like what you said, because that's really important for people to hear. The more
Yes.
awareness I get, the more freeing it is. And I
Yes.
totally second that. I've had that experience myself, and it is a message that I work hard to express and convey to my clients in the therapy sessions too. It is scary. But it is
Yes,
liberating.
because now it's out there. I mean, it
Yes,
can't hurt anymore. it's it's
exactly.
exposed. Yes.
And Ifeoma, I just want to reiterate that I am truly thankful for your willingness to be part of this podcast and to share such an integral story that impacts so many individuals. And unfortunately, even though some may, view stay-at-home mom as a common story for many, it just doesn't get told. And today, this sharing has been profound, and I know it will be profound for our listeners. And a sharing of this kind can only encourage other listeners to tap into their own tucked away life moments and reposition their stance in managing a similar circumstance, if not the same one. And I've got to say that you have this gentle fierceness that comes out so beautifully. And I want to just I think I want to share. I just want to tell you that I too would like to address you as what you are known as, a chief encouragement officer. So thank you for your deep conversation and for all your sharing.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Salima. That is that's interesting. I wouldn't say you're the first person to have said that, because I know sometimes when the phone call when the phone rings and I pick it and somebody says, "Can I speak with your mom?" I'm like, "I am the mom."
Oh
So
my
then some
goodness.
people are like, "You have this gentle voice, but it's also like it's kind of impactful." So
Mm-hmm.
I like that blessing, and it's part
Mm-hmm.
of my mission to use my voice in
Mm-hmm.
empowering women and
Mm-hmm.
inspiring joy. So I'm glad that that also came out for you.
Yes.
That means I'm using my gifts.
You're
Thank
using
you
it.
so much.
Absolutely. And once again, Ifoma, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma.
Thank you, Salima, for getting people to dare to speak out and speak up.
Thank you. I'm so hopeful that this will help others to come forward
Yes.
and tell a story of their own. Thank you. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.